Must be nice counting bandages while real soldiers fight, one of the men sneered as they passed Lena Marlowe in the depot. She didn't flinch, didn't answer, only lowered her gaze, letting the insult drift into silence. Hours later, when the storm howled outside the base, Sergeant Adrian Cole stepped into the equipment shed. At first, he only saw the same quiet supply clerk, sitting cross-legged, sharpening a blade in silence. But then, he noticed the marks. 13 precise notches carved into the spine. Not decorations, not accidents. Kill marks. His breath caught as the truth hit him. The woman they dismissed as invisible was not just a clerk. In that moment, Cole realized Lena Marlowe might be the deadliest operator he'd ever met. The desert outpost woke before the sun, a place where the hum of generators and the rattle of gear replaced birdsong. Among the soldiers who prepared for another day of patrols and briefings, Lena Marlowe moved like a shadow. She worked in the supply depot, her movements precise, her records flawless, her presence almost forgettable. In a world that valued scars and battlefield stories, she was invisible, just another clerk counting crates of ammunition and tracking fuel lines. Must be nice hiding behind a desk while real soldiers fight, one corporal sneered as he passed her. His companions laughed, the sound cutting through the stale air like a blade. Lena did not flinch. She lowered her gaze, finished the notation on her clipboard, and returned the papers to their drawer. The insult slid past her like wind over stone. Silence, she had learned, was stronger than retorts. Sergeant Adrian Cole barely noticed her either. A veteran of 3 combat tours, he was known for bringing his men back alive. In his world, competence meant aggression, decisiveness, and grit under fire. He considered Lena part of the background, useful, reliable, but ordinary. She delivered his requisitions, processed his forms, and faded back into obscurity. To Cole, she was a clerk, nothing more. But the desert had its ways of rewriting truths. That evening, a sandstorm rolled across the mountains, its winds shrieking like tortured steel. Orders were given for all personnel to shelter. Operations halted. Soldiers crowded into recreation tents, restless under the enforced idleness. Cole, pacing the compound in irritation, noticed something unusual. The equipment shed door hung slightly open, its frame glowing faintly against the storm's fury. Protocol demanded all doors sealed in weather like this. Muttering curses, he approached. Inside, he heard it, a steady rasp, rhythmic and deliberate. Shh, shh, shh. It was the unmistakable sound of steel drawn across stone. He pushed the door open. There she was, Lena Marlowe, sitting cross-legged on a tarp, shoulders relaxed, face calm. In her hands, a combat knife moved in smooth arcs against a whetstone. The weapon was no standard issue blade. It was longer, darker, balanced for killing rather than utility. Her hands guided it with the ease of someone who had repeated this motion thousands of times. Cole frowned. "Playing soldier specialist?" he asked, voice dripping with annoyance. "That looks a little heavy for someone who counts bandages all day." Lena did not answer. The rasp continued, steady, purposeful. He stepped closer, irritation rising. "That isn't regulation. Where the hell did you even—" The words stopped. His eyes had fallen on the spine of the blade. Notches, 13 of them, each carved with deliberate precision. They were not decorative, not random scratches from careless use. These were records, markers of lives taken, kill marks. Cole froze. He had seen such tallies before, but always crude, etched in haste. These were different, careful, methodical, almost ritualistic. Each notch seemed to hold weight beyond mere numbers. A memory stirred in his mind, from whispers overheard on his first tour. A colonel had spoken in hushed tones of a program few admitted existed. Operatives who lived under false identities, embedded in regular units, unseen until needed. Their code name had been strange, unforgettable. Amaranthine. Soldiers who were both myth and reality, ghosts walking among the ordinary. Cole looked at Lena with new eyes. She sat unmoving, her gaze on the blade, her silence sharper than steel. The quiet clerk, the woman dismissed as invisible, radiated a presence he had never noticed before. Finally, she lifted her head. Their eyes met. She neither confirmed nor denied what he was thinking. She didn't need to. The truth pressed against him like the storm outside. This was no ordinary supply clerk. His breath caught. In that moment, Adrian Cole understood something chilling and undeniable. Lena Marlowe, ignored, underestimated, forgotten, might be the deadliest operator he had ever met. And those 13 notches were not just scars on a weapon. They were the edge of a secret that could shatter everything he thought he knew. At Forward Operating Base Kilo, routine was both shield and prison. Soldiers lived inside an endless cycle. Patrol, eat, maintain equipment, sleep, repeat. Each man carried the exhaustion of war in his shoulders, yet clung to ritual because without it, the chaos outside the wire might seep into their bones. Amid this churn of duty and monotony, Lena Marlowe remained invisible. Her desk was always neat, requests stamped, logged, and filed before anyone had to ask twice. Inventory tallies flawless, medical supplies checked, fuel barrels accounted for, weapons maintenance scheduled on the dot. She was, in every sense, indispensable, but so efficient she disappeared. The more perfect her work, the less anyone noticed her. In the hierarchy of soldiers, that made her background noise. Adrian Cole embodied that dismissive attitude. To him, logistics was a supporting act, like the stagehands in a play that only mattered when something went wrong. He respected combat, grit under fire, decisions made in seconds, lives carried on a sergeant's shoulders. The woman in the depot, with her calm voice and emotionless reports, was necessary but unworthy of his attention. When he dropped a requisition on her desk, he didn't bother with pleasantries. She was part of the machine, not the war. Yet some noticed details others missed. Private Ethan Cross, the youngest in Cole's unit, had arrived at Kilo with the cautious eyes of someone eager to prove himself. Unlike the veterans, he didn't yet wear cynicism like armor. He listened, he observed, and it was Ethan who began to sense that the quiet supply clerk wasn't quite what she seemed. It started small. One evening, while helping transport crates of rations, Ethan passed the depot and caught Lena glancing toward the perimeter walls. Her eyes weren't wandering idly. They were scanning, the measured sweep of someone trained to assess vulnerabilities. When she saw him notice, she dropped her gaze instantly, her face smoothing into neutrality. But Ethan felt the shift. Another time, he stopped by to sign out replacement magazines. While Cole and the rest of the team were joking loudly about their last mission, Ethan caught Lena studying the map pinned to the wall behind them. Not the supply routes, but the topography beyond the wire, contours, valleys, potential choke points. Her gaze lingered just a second too long before she returned to her ledger. These observations gnawed at him. Why would a clerk, whose world was boxes and forms, watch the horizon with a soldier's awareness? Why did she walk the compound at dawn before most were awake, her steps deliberate, her posture straight as if marking distances only she understood? He mentioned it once to Cole, cautiously. "Sergeant, you ever notice how Marlowe pays attention to things outside her lane?" Cole barely looked up from cleaning his rifle. "Son, clerks don't fight wars. They count socks. Don't waste brain space on ghosts." Ethan dropped it, but the feeling lingered. Meanwhile, Lena's invisibility remained intact. In the mess tent she ate alone, eyes lowered, her tray cleared with mechanical efficiency. She didn't join in poker nights or late-night debates about home. She lived behind walls of professionalism so tight that even the curious avoided prying. It was easier to let her fade into the background than to ask who she was. Yet Ethan kept watching, and little by little, he built a mosaic from fragments. The way she checked her quarters with subtle habits. Threads placed at thresholds, objects left in precise positions. The way she always sat facing the exit. The faint calluses on her hands, not from pens but from weapons. In her silence, he heard an echo of something more. Cole, of course, continued as before. To him, Lena Marlowe was a clerk, a cog in the machine, useful but replaceable. He couldn't imagine her in a firefight, couldn't picture her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. The idea was absurd. Logistics didn't bleed. Logistics didn't save lives under fire. Logistics filed forms. But Ethan Cross began to wonder. It was in the storm's aftermath, days before the ambush that would change everything, when he saw it most clearly. Lena was standing near the comms tower, eyes lifted toward the mountains beyond the wire. The wind tugged at her bun, and for a moment the mask slipped. Her expression wasn't one of boredom or distraction. It was sharp, assessing, ready. When she noticed Ethan, she gave the same professional nod she gave everyone. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he had glimpsed something rare, like catching sight of a hawk just before it vanishes into the clouds. He didn't know what it meant, not yet, but he trusted his instincts. Lena Marlowe was more than she let them see, and when the storm broke over their lives, he suspected he would be proven right. The desert never gave warnings. One moment the horizon was clear, stars sharp against the velvet night. The next the mountains vanished, swallowed by a wall of sand. A sandstorm moved like a living beast, devouring light, silencing distance, and bending the will of every man it touched. At Forward Operating Base Kalo, the order came swiftly. All personnel were to shelter. Floodlights flickered, generators strained, and the perimeter dissolved into a blur of golden gray. Sand hissed through gaps in metal siding, rattled windows, and forced even the most hardened soldiers indoors. Inside the recreation tent, laughter rang forced and brittle as men tried to distract themselves with cards and arm wrestling. Sergeant Adrian Cole, restless by nature, couldn't sit still. His recon mission had been postponed by the storm, and each passing hour felt like opportunity bleeding away. He walked the compound, scarf pulled tight across his face, goggles fogged with grit. The storm clawed at him, but he welcomed the sting. Movement, even against the storm, was better than waiting. That was when he noticed the equipment shed. Its door hung slightly ajar, a thin sliver of light cutting through the storm's rage. Protocol demanded every door sealed in weather like this. Cole cursed under his breath and strode toward it, irritation quickening his steps. He expected negligence, some rookie failing to secure gear. What he found instead stopped him cold. The sound reached him before the sight, a rasping whisper, steady, unbroken. Shh, shh, shh. The rhythm was deliberate, practiced, almost meditative. Cole eased the door wider. Lena Marlowe sat cross-legged on a tarp. Her posture was relaxed, her breathing even. In her hands, a combat knife slid across a whetstone with fluid precision. The storm's roar seemed distant compared to the cadence of steel on stone. Sparks of dim light danced across the blade with each stroke. Cole's irritation rose. "Specialist?" he said, his voice roughened by the storm. "What are you doing? Playing soldier now? That looks like a serious piece of hardware for someone who files paperwork." Lena didn't look up, didn't flinch. The rasp continued. "Shh, shh, shh." Cole stepped closer, annoyed by her silence. "That isn't regulation. Where the hell did you even—" He stopped. His words fell away as his eyes fixed on the spine of the blade. Notches, 13 of them, each carved by hand, precise and unique. Some shallow, some deep, one glinting with a faint copper inlay. They weren't careless scratches. They weren't decorations. They were deliberate, the kind of markings soldiers whispered about in hushed tones. Kill marks. Cole's chest tightened. He had seen men carve crude tallies on rifle stocks, quick scratches made in the fog of war. But this was different. The marks were symmetrical, ritualistic, carrying meaning beyond simple numbers. A memory flickered. His first deployment, years ago. A night when he had overheard his commander speaking quietly with a visiting colonel. The words had been muffled, but a single term had seared itself into his mind. Amaranthine. The colonel's tone had carried weight. He had spoken of assets that didn't officially exist. Operators hidden among regular troops, living under fabricated roles, their identities protected at the highest levels. Ghosts in plain sight. Soldiers who answered only when the situation demanded, and when they did, the battlefield bent to their will. Cole had dismissed it then as rumor, another story passed among soldiers desperate to believe in myths. But now, standing in the storm's dim light, staring at Lena Marlowe's blade, the whispers sharpened into reality. Lena finally lifted her head, her gaze locked with his, calm and unflinching. She didn't deny what the notches meant. She didn't confirm it either. The silence between them was answer enough. Cole's throat tightened. The woman he had ignored, The clerk he had dismissed as invisible radiated a quiet gravity he had never noticed. For years she had filed his forms, processed his gear, blended into the edges of every room. And yet here, in the storm's shadow, she seemed larger than life, an operator whose skill had been etched into steel. The storm howled louder, rattling the shed's walls. Sand slipped through cracks, filling the air with golden haze. But Cole hardly noticed. He could only see the knife, the notches, and the woman holding it. A truth crystallized in his mind. Lena Marlowe was no ordinary supply clerk. She was something else, something hidden by design. And if the stories were true, then the outpost had been harboring one of the most dangerous and most valuable operatives alive. His breath caught, heavy with the weight of realization. Outside, the storm raged on, swallowing the world in chaos. Inside, in the quiet rhythm of steel on stone, Adrian Cole saw the shadow of amaranthine revealed. The storm was supposed to be nature's fury alone, but hidden inside its howl came another sound. Boots striking sand in rhythm, muffled shouts carried on the wind. At first, Sergeant Adrian Cole thought it was just the storm playing tricks. Then the sharp crack of suppressed gunfire cut through the chaos. The outpost was under attack. Mercenaries had chosen their moment well. The storm cloaked their approach, blinded the sentries, and drowned the noise of movement. By the time alarms blared, figures in dark gear were already inside the wire, their weapons angled with ruthless precision. Cole's instincts kicked in. He reached for his radio, barking orders, but static drowned his voice. The storm was jamming communications. Panic flickered in the compound as soldiers scrambled without clarity. Then Lena Marlowe moved. She rose from the tarp in the equipment shed, the knife already sheathed at her ankle, her movements fluid, unhurried. Gone was the quiet clerk, the invisible woman of ledgers and requisitions. Her posture straightened, her face sharpened, her voice emerged crisp with command. "They're using the storm as cover," she said, tone steady. "This isn't a raid. It's a targeted strike. Command will be their first objective." Cole stared at her, still clutching his sidearm. "How the hell do you—" "Because this is what I do," Lena cut in, her eyes hard. "If you want your men alive, follow my lead." It was not a plea. It was an order disguised as fact. Cole hesitated. Then another burst of gunfire rang out, closer now. He saw shadows moving through the storm beyond the shed. Something in Lena's composure convinced him. He gave a sharp nod. Within minutes, they linked with Cole's scattered team. Private Ethan Cross, Corporal Javier Ramos, and Corporal Daniel Hale, the sniper. Confusion was written on their faces as they saw Lena walking at the front, her steps deliberate, her expression unreadable. "Sergeant?" Ramos asked. "What's the supply clerk doing here?" Cole's answer was simple, grim. "She's not just supply. Listen to her." Lena wasted no time. "3 hostiles near the fuel depot, one with thermal optics," she said, eyes narrowing, as if she could see through the storm. "If they breach the tanks, half this base goes up. Hale, take high ground on the comms tower. Ramos, flank west. Cross, with me." Her voice carried no doubt. For a heartbeat, the men looked at Cole. He gave a curt nod. "Do it." Orders fell into place. Hale disappeared into the shadows, climbing toward a vantage point. Ramos slipped along the barricades. Ethan stayed close to Lena, his young face pale but resolute. Then the fight erupted. Figures in black swept toward the fuel depot. A flash of light, Hale's rifle cracked through the storm. One hostile dropped, sand erupting where his body fell. The others scattered, returning fire. Ramos surged from the flank, suppressing them with bursts of his rifle. Lena moved like she'd been born for this. She signaled Ethan forward, ducking between crates, her handgun barking with precise rhythm. 2 mercenaries fell before they even knew she had drawn. Her calm was unnerving. Even under fire, her breathing remained even, her movements efficient. Cole fired alongside her, his mind reeling. He had fought beside seasoned operators, but Lena's command of the battlefield was different. She didn't hesitate, didn't falter. Every instruction she gave fit the storm's chaos, as if she had anticipated it all. "They're not here to destroy," she called over the gunfire. "They're hunting specific assets. If they reach the command bunker, it's over." "Then that's where we hold them," Cole growled. Together they pushed through the storm, gunfire cracking in bursts. Ethan covered her flank, nerves tight but eyes locked on her every gesture. When she raised a hand, he stopped. When she moved, he followed. And with each passing minute, his doubt shifted into trust. They reached the command center perimeter. The scene was carnage. Fallen guards, doors forced, enemy voices echoing inside. Lena crouched, her knife flashing briefly as she checked the locks. "They've breached subsection C," she said. "That's where intelligence vaults are stored. They want what's inside." Ramos cursed. "How do you even know?" "Because I've seen this play before," Lena answered flatly. Her eyes lifted to Cole's. "This is amaranthine business, and you need to decide now. Are you following me, or are you waiting to die?" The silence that followed was heavier than the storm. Cole's men looked to him, faces grim, waiting for a decision. He remembered the blade, the notches carved with precision, the calm in her gaze. "She leads," Cole said at last. No one argued. The team advanced into the bunker, Lena at the front. Her presence no longer belonged to a clerk. She was something else entirely, measured, lethal, unshakable. The storm outside might have swallowed the world, but inside she carved clarity from chaos. And for the first time, Cole realized he was not in command. He was following. The command bunker was pitch black except for the weak pulse of emergency lights that flickered red across concrete walls. Smoke lingered in the air, heavy with cordite. Sergeant Adrian Cole and his squad pressed against the cold steel bulkhead, breaths shallow, nerves taut. Ahead of them, the vault, the heart of the base, stood scarred by cutting torches. If it fell, every intelligence file stored inside would be gone, and dozens of undercover assets across the region would be doomed. Lena Marlowe crouched at the front. She wasn't the quiet clerk anymore. Her shoulders squared with certainty, her voice cutting through the dark like steel on glass. Three ahead, two watching the corridor, one by the vault door. They're focused on bypassing the locks. We move on my mark. Ramos frowned. How can you even see them in this dark? Lena didn't turn. I don't need to see them. Listen. Cole strained his ears. Beneath the low hum of generators, faint whispers carried. The shuffling of boots, a cough stifled, the scrape of tools against metal. She was right. She raised her hand. Hale, cover from the rear. Ramos, suppress left flank. Cross with me. Sergeant, anchor the push. Cole felt a strange shift. He was used to commanding, to being the voice others followed. But in this suffocating darkness, it was Lena's authority that steadied them. He gave a terse nod. You heard her. Move. The corridor erupted in violence. Hale's suppressed rifle cracked, dropping the lookout in a single shot. Ramos surged forward, unleashing controlled bursts that pinned the second hostile behind a concrete pillar. Lena advanced without hesitation, her pistol barking twice. Two sharp flashes of light in the dark. The mercenary at the vault collapsed before he could even raise his weapon. Clear, she ordered. Her voice was calm, measured, as if this chaos were routine. They swept into the chamber. Sparks still hissed from the half-melted lock on the vault door. Specialized tools lay scattered, evidence of how close the mercenaries had come. Lena knelt, inspecting the damage, her fingers moving with practiced care. Another minute and they'd have cracked it, she murmured. Then louder, we hold here. Reinforcements will sweep the compound, but until then, this room does not fall. Cole looked around. The bunker smelled of blood and smoke. His men positioned themselves as she directed, Hale covering the stairwell, Ramos crouched behind an overturned desk, Ethan Cross keeping eyes on the corridor. Every angle was secured, every order precise. For a moment, Cole simply watched her. The Lena he thought he knew, the invisible woman who filed his paperwork and tallied bandages, was gone. In her place stood a commander born of shadows, her movements exact, her awareness absolute. She carried herself not as someone improvising, but as someone fulfilling muscle memory burned in fire. Gunfire echoed outside. Shadows flickered at the far corridor, more hostiles pressing in. Ramos hissed a warning. Lena didn't flinch. They'll come in waves. Count your fire. Make it precise. Hale, mark targets. Call them. Cross, do not break position unless I say. Her words flowed like doctrine. When the first wave surged, they were met with controlled fury. Hale's sniper rifle cracked. Ramos shifted fire like clockwork. Ethan held steady, his nerves anchored by her presence. Cole fired alongside them, covering gaps. But he knew. She was the spine holding them together. Minutes stretched like hours. The mercenaries pressed hard, but each assault crumbled against the team's coordinated defense. Lena's voice never wavered. 2 down the left corridor, 3 stacking on the stairwell. Shift fire, now. Every order turned chaos into clarity. Finally, silence. The last echo of boots faded into the storm outside. The bunker was secure. Cole exhaled, his hands trembling from adrenaline. His men checked magazines, reloaded, exchanged glances heavy with awe. None of them looked at Lena as a clerk anymore. She stepped to the vault one last time, running her hand across its steel face. Relief softened her features for only a breath before the mask returned. She turned to the squad. "You did well. The vault is safe. That was the objective." Ethan swallowed hard. "Specialist? Who are you?" Her eyes flicked to Cole, then back to the young private. "No one you'll ever have to remember." Cole understood then. The word that had haunted his memory resurfaced. Amaranthine. Whispers of deep cover operatives, ghosts folded into ordinary units, soldiers who officially didn't exist. For years he had dismissed it as rumor. But now, standing in this bunker lit by crimson haze, he had fought alongside one. Lena Marlowe was amaranthine, a shadow warrior, a ghost in plain sight. For the first time in his career, Adrian Cole felt humbled. He had always believed leadership belonged to men like him, combat-hardened sergeants who carried scars as proof of authority. Yet here was a woman no one respected, no one noticed, who had guided them through hell with precision and calm. The battle was over, but the revelation would linger. He knew now that their world was shaped not just by the visible heroes, but by those who vanished into silence, leaving only whispers and notches carved into steel. Dawn returned slowly, bleeding gold across the desert ridges. The sandstorm had passed, leaving the base battered but intact. Smoke curled from shattered barricades, and the med tents overflowed with the wounded. Engineers moved methodically to repair what they could. Soldiers, exhausted but alive, stumbled through the wreckage of the night. In the quiet after the chaos, Lena Marlowe reappeared exactly as she had always been. Clipboard in hand, hair pulled tight in regulation, expression calm, almost detached. To anyone watching, she looked no different from the woman who had tallied bandages the day before. There was no hint that she had commanded a defense, no trace of the precision that had saved the intelligence vault. She blended back into her cover with the ease of slipping into a familiar uniform. Private Ethan Cross watched her cross the compound. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. He remembered her sharp voice cutting through the dark, her calm presence in the bunker. Yet here she was, walking past as if nothing had happened. The dissonance left him shaken. Sergeant Adrian Cole noticed too. Part of him wanted to call her out, to demand answers, to tell the others what she had done. But he understood now. That was not her way. Her survival, her mission, depended on anonymity. She was meant to vanish. By mid-morning, a Black Hawk descended in a swirl of dust. From its cabin stepped Colonel Marcus Ellery, an intelligence officer whose very presence shifted the air. He carried no rifle, only a folder tucked beneath his arm, yet the soldiers on the ground instinctively stiffened. His eyes scanned the compound with clinical detachment before settling briefly on Lena. The glance was quick, almost imperceptible, but Cole caught it. It was not the glance of a man noticing a clerk. It was recognition. Ellery's questions were precise. He asked Cole's squad for details of the attack, timings, positions, casualties. When he asked how the bunker had been held, Cole felt the weight of his gaze. "Sir," Cole said evenly, "my men executed according to training. We secured the vault in time." Ellery tilted his head. "And Specialist Marlowe?" "I was told she was present." Cole hesitated only a second. "She assisted with supplies, coordinated equipment distribution, nothing beyond her station." Ellery's expression remained unreadable. For a moment, Cole thought the colonel might press further, but instead Ellery gave a faint nod, as if confirming something unspoken. "Very well. The report will reflect your account." The conversation ended, but Cole knew Ellery understood more than he admitted. The colonel's silence was not ignorance. It was protection. He, too, was guarding the secret. Later that day, Lena was gone. Her quarters were cleared, her belongings vanished as though she had never lived there. No farewell, no message, only absence. To the soldiers, she was simply reassigned. Another name shifted in the endless rotation of war. To Cole, the void she left was heavier than any casualty. That evening, he returned to his bunk. Among his gear, tucked into the folds of his pack, he found something small, a strip of steel, no larger than his finger, carved with a single precise notch. Not a kill mark, not a tally, a symbol, a recognition. Cole sat in silence, the token in his palm. He understood. Lena Marlowe had left him proof, not of who she was, but of what she represented. A shadow among soldiers, a ghost who fought unseen, one of the Amaranthan. When night fell, his men gathered in the mess hall, voices low, laughter forced. They spoke of the storm, of survival, of the ambush, but not one mentioned Lena's name. They had witnessed her transformation, yet instinctively agreed on silence. Some truths were too heavy for daylight. Cole leaned back, eyes narrowing toward the desert. He knew he would likely never see her again, but the memory of her voice in the bunker, the calm under fire, the authority that bent chaos into order, it would never leave him. She had vanished, as shadows do. Yet in vanishing, she left a mark sharper than any blade. When the dust finally settled, Lena Marlowe was gone. No farewell, no explanation, just an empty bunk and silence where she had once stood. To most, she had been nothing more than a supply clerk, a face forgotten in the endless machinery of war. But to Sergeant Adrian Cole and the few who had fought beside her that night, she was something else entirely. In the bottom of his pack, Cole discovered the only trace she left behind, a small strip of steel with a single notch carved into it. It wasn't a tally of death, nor a record of violence. It was a message, quiet, deliberate, and unspoken. A reminder that sometimes the greatest marks left on this world are the ones no one else sees. Cole kept that token close, not as proof, but as respect. He realized then that true heroism often comes from those who never seek recognition, those who slip back into the shadows before the world can name them. Lena had saved countless lives, preserved secrets that could alter nations, and yet she vanished without demand for thanks or glory. And perhaps that is what made her legendary. We like to believe heroes are the ones in the spotlight, celebrated and remembered. But sometimes the real heroes are invisible. The quiet figures who carry impossible burdens, fight unseen battles, and leave behind only whispers and mystery. So as you reflect on Lena's story, ask yourself, how many silent guardians walk among us, unrecognized? And how often do we overlook the strength behind ordinary faces? If this story moved you, if you believe in honoring those hidden voices of resilience, make sure to subscribe. There are more stories like Lena's waiting to be told. Stories that remind us that even in silence, greatness speaks.